Hey everybody, it's Randy with Lowbuck LS here again. I finally got my truck back into the shop. It's still cold, but this week I'm going to show you how to pull the fuel injectors out, and we're going to decap the injectors that are in the truck, flow test them, match them up with the set that I tested a couple weeks back, and hopefully get a full set of 8 that are nicely matched and put them back in the truck and hopefully get it running on the decap fuel injectors. So let's get started. Okay, so before I start pulling the fuel injectors, I'm going to start the truck and pull the relay for the fuel pump. And if you look on the inside the lid of the fuse box under the hood, it tells me that this relay right here is for the fuel pump. So it is this relay right here. So I'm going to start up the truck and then pull that relay out, and that should stop the fuel pump and burn up any fuel that's in the rails there, and so I won't have high pressure fuel when I go to disconnect things there. So let's start up the truck. Now we'll go back over here, this relay, and it basically ran out of fuel. So now I'll shut the key off. Now the next thing I'm going to do is pull this plastic cover off the top of the engine. Okay, so I've got that plastic cover off the top of the engine. Now I'm going to, you can see where I've got my 3-bar map sensor plumbed into the manifold there that I did in an earlier video. Now I'm going to spin off the fuel rail here. This crossover piece has what looks like a tire valve in there. I just spun the cap off that. Now I'm going to take a screwdriver and just press in on and you'd see that fuel squirting out of there. So now that's got whatever was left in the fuel rail that didn't get used up. It's relieved the pressure. There'll still be fuel in here when I go to pull the rail off, but at least it won't be under pressure now. So I'll just check it again here, and then put that little cap back on so I don't lose it. And now I'm going to take these. There's 2 8mm bolts here that hold the fuel rails in on, and there should be some on this side here too. Yeah, there's one there, and there's one you can see right back in there. So I'm going to take those bolts out now. Okay, so you can see I've got those 2 bolts out there, and then up here I also took off, there was a 10mm nut here and 2 10mm bolts on this piece, and that allows me to lift up this wiring harness so I can lift up on this crossover tube. So now I'm going to try and pull up on this fuel rail. It's a little stubborn, but so we've got that side out. You can see the fuel injector there. If I move that little piece out, some wiring in the way there, but so the injectors are free on that side. Now I've got to do the same thing on this other side here. It's not quite as accessible, but I'll pull those 2 bolts out and then lift up on the fuel rail, and we should be able to get at the injectors. Okay, so I'm back on the driver's side. I got the 2 bolts out front and back that hold the fuel rail down, and I've already freed up the fuel rail, and this one was a little more stubborn. I ended up having to basically put a screwdriver down here and kind of pry up on the rail like this to get the injectors out of the holes in the ports there. So now what I'm going to do is, you can barely see it, but I'm going to disconnect the the main fuel line and the return fuel line. So I'm going to pry this clip off of the connector for the main fuel line here, and I've got a tool that I hope will work to disconnect that kind of quick coupler deal on the main fuel line there. So we'll do that next. So that is the piece that I pried off of the coupler where the fuel line connects up to the rail. And then I've got this tool here, which I'm going to, I don't have a free hand to, I can't do this with one hand, but basically this tool, I'm gonna basically push inside that coupler there, which should uncouple it and let me disconnect the main fuel line. So I'm going to try that now. Okay, so that was a bit of a struggle, but you can see here I've got these two, the main line and the return line disconnected. So now I think I'm going to work on, I think if I get all these electrical connectors disconnected off of the injectors here, and I see I'm gonna have to disconnect my throttle and cruise control cables here too, and then I should be able to pull the whole fuel rail assembly out of there with all the injectors still attached. So that's what I'm gonna work on now, disconnecting these electrical connectors. Okay, so I'm just figuring out for myself here how to undo these connectors, but it looks like you can pull this gray part off of here, and then you have to push in on this black piece here with a screwdriver, and then that, again, kind of hard to do with one hand here, but then that gray piece comes right out. And now I'm going to push in on this black piece again, and once I have my other hand free here, I'll hold the injector, push in on that black piece, and I'm hoping that connector will just disconnect right from the injector there. So that's what I'm going to do now. And there you can see I've got the first one disconnected. So now I will do the other 7 and undo my throttle and cruise control lines, and then I should be able to pull this whole fuel rail assembly with the injectors out. Okay, so on the passenger side I got all 4 of them clips removed for the electrical, but on the driver's side, because the clip is facing the back, I had a heck of a time, so I ended up just pulling the injectors out. So I've got my 4 injectors from the driver's side pulled out and disconnected there, sitting on the battery. So now I'm going to, I think I'm going to take this little plate off and remove this passenger side fuel rail, and then pull the injectors out on the bench. So we'll do that now. Okay, so that took longer than I expected, but there are the 4, I guess that'd be passenger side injectors still attached to the fuel rail, and the 4 driver's side injectors that I removed from the fuel rail while they were still in the vehicle. So now that took a little longer than I thought, so I'm going to wrap it up for the night, and we'll come back tomorrow and decap. And actually, I'm going to flow test these, same as I did with the last set. I'll flow test them once before decapping, and then again after I've decapped them. So we will be doing that in the morning. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Okay, so it is another day, and we are going to, first of all, we're going to test all these 8 fuel injectors just as they came out of the truck. And to do that, I'm going to use this. I got a battery rigged up, and I got a charger there to keep the voltage constant at 13.5 volts. And then we're going to use this injector test rig that I built a couple videos ago. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see how you can make one for yourself. But that's the first thing we're going to do is run through gonna do the same as I did last time I was testing injectors here, and put this on mode 1, which is a 250 millisecond pulse, and pulse each injector 100 times at 250 milliseconds, and see how they flow before we decap them. So I will get started on that now. Okay, I'm not gonna film me testing all 8 of these stock injectors. I'll just show you on one of them here. So again, I've got my stock truck injector bolted into my test rig here, 400 kPa on the gauge, and I'm going to pulse it 100 times at 250 milliseconds each. So I'll put my graduated cylinder under there and we'll get to testing here. I kind of lost track of where I was at there, but that's the method I'm going to use to, and if I know from my last testing that good stock injectors do about 98 milliliters, and this one is just over 100, so I'm pretty sure it's good, but I kind of lost track of how many times I'd push the button there, so I'm going to turn the camera off. But yeah, I just wanted to show you what the spray pattern and stuff looked like on the stock injector. So, but so far these are looking good, so I'm going to run through all 8, and if they're testing good at like that 98 milliliters per test or whatever, I'm just going to test them once and then decap them, and we'll take it from there. So I'll pick up again shortly. Actually, I'll give you guys a close-up view here of the spray pattern. So this is the stock, not decapped injector, and then later in the video we can compare with the once it's been decapped. So that's what it looks like, the stock injector, and this is a good one, pulsing normally. So later we'll compare that with the decapped injector. Okay, so I got all 8 injectors stock out of the truck tested, and they all turned out really consistent. Like the majority of them, 5 of them flowed 98 milliliters. There was one that was a little low at 95, and 2 that were a little high at 100. So now we're going to decap them and flow them again. So I'm not sure, I think I explained this in a previous video, but I just want to talk for a second about why you even want to decap injectors. And it's because stock injectors work great on a stock engine, but when you're putting a turbo on a LS engine, or any engine for that matter, you're cramming a lot more air in there. So if you left the injectors stock and flowing the stock amount, you would run lean, because you're cramming a bunch more air into the engine, but you're not cramming more fuel into the engine. So in order to get more fuel to go along with the air, you can see there on the injector, there's 4 little holes in the injector, and those 4 holes flow the right amount for a stock engine, but for a turbocharged engine, we need a lot more fuel. So basically what we're going to do is grind that end plate off so it's just one big hole. So we'll do that now. I'll pry this plastic end cap off the injector, and then we'll take them over to the grinder and show you guys how to decap them. I've showed it in a previous video, but I just want to do a complete video start to finish here of decapping and installing injectors here. So we'll get rolling on that. Okay, so I'm going to attempt here to show you guys how I pull this O-ring and plastic tip off the injector. So I've just got a O-ring pick here. So we'll go in, and I think the O-rings I got from Amazon aren't exactly the right size for these injectors. I think they work on those flex fuel injectors, but so I'm trying not to damage these O-rings as I pull them off. So now I've got that O-ring off there. You can see
there's a little gap there, and then there's that plastic piece. So I'm just gonna take some needle nose pliers and kind of wedge them in the gap there like that, and then just slowly rotate it and try and work this piece off there. And there you can see that cap went flying off. So now I've got that one ready to decap here. So we'll take it over to the grinder and I'll show you how I decap them. Okay, so as you can see, I'm over at the grinder here. So I've got a 13 millimeter 6-point socket. I'm just gonna wedge the injector into there like that, and that gives me something to hold on to. And now I'm gonna fire up the grinder, and we're just gonna grind around this edge kind of at a 45-degree angle here and get rid of that injector cap that has the 4 holes in it there. So we'll fire up the grinder and get to work here. Okay, you can't really, my phone isn't very focused here, so I'll take this over to where you can see a little better. But you can see that that top cap is gone now, and it's just one big hole instead of where those 4 little holes used to be. So I'll take it over where you can see it a little better. And now I've got it back on the workbench here. So yeah, you could see before there was that plate with the 4 small holes in it, and now it's just got that one big hole in the center with, and you can see the pintle sticking out of it there. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other 7 injectors, and then we'll flow test them and see what we get for results. Okay, I also wanted to show putting that O-ring and cap back on. So it's pretty simple. You just take that O-ring, push it on there like that, and then take that plastic cap and a hammer and just give her a tap down, and then your injector is back to normal and ready to put in the truck. But first we got to flow test it. But that's putting the O-ring and cap back on it. Okay, I also wanted to show how I put new filters in. And again, I've showed this in a previous video, but just wanted to make a kind of a complete injector servicing video from start to finish. So I've got a sheet metal screw like that. Just gonna shove it in this end, and you'll feel it start to grab, and then give it another, I don't know, turn or so. And then I take some MIG pliers, grab it like that, take a handle, or a hammer, sorry, and just tap it out. And then you can see that filter came out with the screw. And I'll take the filter off the screw so I can use it for next time. Now I've got new filters here, got them from Amazon. There is the new filter, and I've got a punch that's just slightly smaller than the ID of that filter. So we'll take the injector, put it up like that, drop the filter into it, take the punch in here, and just tap it down until it stops. You can kind of feel it bottom out there. So I will put filters in all 8 of these decapped injectors, and then we'll flow test them. Okay, so I've got the filters changed in all 8 of my decapped injectors. So now we're going to flow test them. Okay, so here's a clip of the testing of the decaps, and you can see they flow a lot stronger. So that's about 100 cycles, and you can see before when I did the non-decaps I was getting about 100 milliliters, and now I'm getting about 300, so flowing roughly 3 times as much. and I'll show you guys a close-up shot of the spray pattern again, and we can compare with what it looked like decapped to non-decapped. So stand by. And here's a close-up of what the spray pattern looks like after it's been decapped. And I'll just put a shot in here of what it looked like before it was decapped, so you'll be able to see the difference. But yeah, it's flowing basically 3 times as much now that we've decapped them. Okay, so I got done testing all 8 decapped injectors, and I'm pretty happy with the results. The lowest one was 294 milliliters, highest one was 307, and most of them are in that 298 to 300 milliliter range. So this was stock, this was decapped. So basically what I'm going to do, the most common number, like 5 of these ones flowed 98. The most common number over here is 300. So I'm just dividing 300 by 98 to get a factor. These ones flow just over 3 times more, and I think the stockers are rated at 24 pounds per hour. So multiplying by that number, these ones are now flowing 73.5 pounds per hour. So I think I'm happy with these results. They're all pretty, they're within, probably 5% of each other. So I'm going to put these injectors in the truck, and then show you guys how to change the table in HP tuners to use the new flow rate. So we'll talk to you in a bit. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to put the injectors back in the truck. So first of all, I think I'm going to hook up the electrical connectors first, and then we'll put them into the fuel rail and then slide them down into the spot where they're going to be. So yeah, first of all, I'll just put these electrical connectors on. So it just clips in there like that, and then that gray clip, I don't know if you can really see there, maybe I'll do a close-up. Hang on. So that's what it looks like with the electrical connector hooked up again. You got to put this gray clip on there, and it seems to secure this top part of the wiring harness, I guess, and yeah, just supports that upper part. So I will get all 8 injectors hooked up like that, and then, like I said, we'll put them into the fuel rail and then put them into down into the holes where they got to go down there. So get back to you shortly. Okay, so now I've got all of the electrical connectors hooked back up to the fuel injectors. So now I'm going to put a bit of grease onto the O-ring here, because I noticed they were really hard to pull out of the fuel rail. So I'm going to put a bit of grease on the O-rings for all these injectors, and put the O-rings, or put the injectors into the fuel rail. So that is what I'm going to work on now. Okay, so now I've got all of the injectors put back into the fuel rail, and these little clips put on to hold the injectors into the fuel rail on both sides. Can't see that side very good, but now I'm going to put the injectors down into the holes where they need to go there. Let's see if I can, yeah, can't see them very good, but there's one of the holes right there. So I'm gonna put the injectors back where they belong, and then bolt the fuel rails down. Okay, so I think I've got things pretty well back together. I got those fuel rails, the injectors put down into their ports, fuel rails on, fuel rails are bolted down. This crossover piece of tubing is in, other side fuel rail is in and bolted down, and our fuel lines are connected. So I think we're pretty well ready to start up, but first I'm going to hook up with HP tuners and tell the ECM what size of injectors we have now. So I'll step you guys through how to do that. Okay, so I've got my most recent tune loaded up in HP tuners here, and I'm going to go into engine, and what I'm going to change here is this table called flow rate versus KPA. I'm going to open that up, and it's 3.13, so all the way across. So I'm going to multiply that number by that number I calculated earlier, 3.0612, which is basically the factor that these decapped injectors flow like 3.0612 times more than the stock injectors. So I'm going to multiply that times 3.13, and that comes up to 9.58. So I'm going to click on the corner of the table there to highlight the whole thing, enter 9.58, and it's got 9.58 all the way across there now. So I should be able to close that out. I'm going to save it as a new file with today's date. Today is February 16th, 2019. We'll save. And now I'm going to turn on the key for the truck. And I'm going to write this file to the truck. And it'll take 20 seconds or so here. So it's done writing that new tune to the truck, so I'm going to close out of HP tuners here and we'll try fire it up. So stand by. Okay, so we got those new injectors, or the decapped injectors, in. We got the change made in HP tuners, so let's try fire up the truck. So it fired right up. It's running a little rough, but so there you have it. It starts and runs with the new injectors. Yeah, let me flip the camera around here for a second. Okay, so I think we'll call that a success. The injectors are decapped, they're installed, truck starts and runs. I'll take it out for a test drive and see how it actually drives on the road. And then I think for next week's video, we'll either I'll do some street tuning with HP tuners, doing the real-time tuning, or we'll get started on putting on those hooker cast manifolds and crossover pipe and redoing the hot side. So I'm gonna call it a wrap for this week. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next Tuesday. Bye for now.